Okay, Michael, we are live.
I honestly love every time you say that, it makes me laugh. It just
Yeah.
makes, I don't know why, it just makes me laugh. Because were we dead before is kind of the feeling that I always have. Anyway, hi, this is Michael Waitze, and welcome back to e-commerce undercover. I love the way Radha's just smirking. I just love it. As
The thing
always,
is, that's not even on purpose. It's just
I know
like
it's not
I
on
can
purpose.
only
That's why I
smile
love
with
it.
one side of the face.
That's why I love it. As always, I am joined by my co-host, whose name I always mispronounce, Martin Ronfort. And today we have a killer guest, Radha Mesova. I'm sure I got that wrong too, so I'm just starting off all on the wrong foot. Radha, it's great to have you here. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me here. How are you doing?
It is, I am on fire, as you can tell.
Nice.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a
Hey, Martin.
real pleasure to have you here, Radha, and to be back for e-commerce undercover. And yeah, I'm sure we're gonna have a very great conversation with everything you know about e-commerce. Yeah, that's gonna be super cool. So thank you very much once again for joining us today.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I feel like we have our rock star on the show. Like, I don't think I've ever seen somebody else's YouTube video and then met them. So it's a little surreal for me because you're sitting basically in the place where you filmed a bunch of videos. We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
And now you're not filming, but now you're real. It's just weird for me. Anyway.
I can imagine that. I feel that. I've seen
Don't
that
you?
happen to me before too.
That's
I
funny.
mean that in the best possible way. So Radha, for our audience who may or may not know you, do you want to just give us a little bit of your background for context before we jump into the main topic of e-commerce?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Radha, as 100 times mentioned. I run my own e-commerce store at this point. I also sing and I write songs. I act outside of that too, and a bunch of extracurriculars here and there. I was born in a small republic called Ingushetia. No one really knows what it is. It's never met anyone who does. But if anybody is curious, you just got to zoom in really close into the Caucasus Mountains between Russia and Turkey. And when you think you have zoomed enough, keep zooming and you'll see it looks like a teeny tiny shrimp on the map. I grew up in Germany, however. I was born there. I grew up in Germany, lived there for like 12 years. And then when I was a teenager, I came to Canada. My whole life, however, my parents have always been very abusive. I grew up in a very dysfunctional home, struggled with a lot of mental health issues, anxieties, eating disorders, suicides, like suicidal thoughts, I mean. And around the time when I just came to Canada, when I was a teenager, I ran away from home. I became homeless for a couple of years, attended university, and then right after I graduated, I started my first e-commerce store, which is now doing approximately 15 to 16,000 Canadian per month. I am still pursuing music, acting, and yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at.
The story sounds amazing. Do you plan to have a movie about you or something, or?
Oh, I definitely do. Like I've already like planned out the books I'm gonna write and then how I'm gonna do the movie / documentaries. It's like already there. The vision is there.
What kind of outlet does acting give you?
Thanks for asking that, by the way.
Sure.
I feel like, see, the thing is, initially when I was very, very young, I always wanted to sing.
Right.
And then I got discouraged by that, like immediately shut down. It's like, you're not going to be a singer. And I was told my whole life, you're a horrible singer anyways, you shouldn't sing. So that's when I started gravitating towards acting, because no one knew what I acted like. And a lot of teachers in school told me I'm really good. So for me, acting became like this place where I could just kind of be somebody else, but I
Right.
was still me. It felt like when I was growing up my whole life with social anxieties, as if when I was acting, I was that perfect version of myself, like the confident, the bold, the brave one, who never had to be afraid of anything, who didn't have to worry about what people thought of her. It was like, this is me in the future kind of thing when I was
Right.
acting. And so acting became this outlet for me where I finally felt like I was just being truly me, like where I didn't have any social anxieties, where I had no problems. It was just me at the happiest and best version of myself. Yeah, pretty much
I'm
that's what
really,
acting.
I'm really curious. Do you feel like there was a time where during that period when you were acting and you were that best version of yourself that you realized maybe I'll just be this best version of myself without the acting? Do you know what I mean? Like, was there an epiphany where you just said, screw it, I'm just going to be this thing that I feel like I am right now? You know what I mean?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, this was like in grade 11.
Yep.
Right around that time, I was already like had decided that one day like soon at least, I think I want to run away from home because I just couldn't deal with it anymore.
Right.
And that was also the point when I told myself, well, if I want to do that, I have to be more confident. I have to believe in myself, because otherwise, how am I going to survive in this world if I like run away and I can't even ask a bus driver for directions? Because that's
Right.
how bad my social anxieties were.
Got it.
So then I had a presentation in high school, and I thought to myself, you know what? I'm just going to pretend I'm an actor. I'm going to pretend this is an acting role. I'm going to pretend that I'm some sort of CEO giving like a business presentation in front of like my company or something like that. That's the acting role. And I really prepared for it, and I delivered the best presentation of my life at that point. Now, I didn't think anything of that, but at the end of the school year, I won my first award in high school because my teacher I basically won the award for best senior orator in high
Wow.
school. And I was so shocked because I'm like, I'm not like, I never speak up. I never even say a single word in class, and I get the one for presentations, you know? But I always believe that whatever you create in life, there's no such thing as like almost never such a thing as luck. And so what happened is that I won this award because of the work. And that was the only award that came with the Indigo gift card. Indigo is basically a bookstore in Canada.
Okay.
And so I ended up buying this book that I had my eyes on for a while, because living with my parents, with my mom specifically, I could never have bought a book otherwise. And it was called The Secret to Teen Power, where it basically talked about how you always have a choice, and how it talked about the law of attraction, how your mindset affects really what you do, and that the life you're currently in is based on your own choices and your own decisions.
Go ahead.
And that's when I really started changing and becoming more confident and realizing that I can change everything I want by just changing the way I think. So in a way, acting helped me get into that mindset by getting the award, then getting the book, then doing.
It's weird though, right? When you finally feel powerful. Let me give you an example. I use this example of cliff diving. When you're standing on top of that cliff the first time and looking down at the ocean, even if it's just like 20 meters high, it's not that high, but you feel like if I jump from here, I'm going to die.
Mm,
And then after you jump and it's fun, you feel empowered. All you want to do is get back up on top of that cliff and jump maybe from even higher.
yeah.
Right? But life is kind of filled with events like that. And once you get past it, you're right. Everybody has like their struggles and challenges. Yours are very interesting to be sure. But when you get past that mindset, and clearly you've done that, do you feel almost immortal? Like, do you know what I mean? Where now when you see a challenge, you're like, I could do that. I could definitely do that. You know what I mean?
Yes and no. Like in a sense that, do I believe I've become a bit more of an adrenaline junkie because of the things I've been through? Yeah. Like a lot of times when people think like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting or scary, I'm just like, nah, that's nothing for me at this point. It's a good thing sometimes. I know how to have fun. It's also a bad thing sometimes, because a lot of times smaller things don't seem like that much fun to me.
Yeah, I get it.
But then the other habit that I still have is when there is a very stressful period or a situation in my life, I'll complain to myself. I'll think it's so hard, and I'll be like, I don't want to do this. And then I get through it and I realize, oh, damn, I just stressed way too much over this, because this wasn't as bad or as hard as I thought it was actually.
Got it.
So I have that too still. Yeah.
I don't talk about this a lot, but I had a pretty decent job when I was in Tokyo, and yeah, it was fun. And my company paid for my apartment until they didn't. And one Thursday, I walked into the office, and my boss called me into his office, and he said, "You have to move out of your apartment." And I was like, "Okay, so how much notice do I have?" He said, "We're sending a truck on Saturday."
What the hell?
I'm just saying it was frightening.
Yeah, I feel
It
that.
was super frightening. It's just this idea that like not having a home is so hard to explain to people that haven't been through it, because I literally had no place to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I slept in my car for like 3 weeks, which is not equivalent. I get that. But I'm just saying, like, that feeling is just, you're completely untethered. It's just really scary.
If I could actually add to that, it's interesting you pointed that out. A lot of times when I talk to people, when I talk about like, just go for your goals, like pursue whatever you want to pursue, that's one of the biggest fear people have. What if I end up homeless? What if I don't have a home anymore?
Yeah.
But to me, I feel like once I've already been through that,
Yeah.
it feels like nothing really. It's just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I always tell myself, oh, well, worst case scenario, I'll be homeless again. Ha ha ha. Like
Right.
it's, so
That
it's like, I get that.
that
But to
that
some
makes you
people, it's
laugh.
like,
That's
huh?
good. That's making you laugh. Like that's funny. Just like you're going to be honest again. Yeah, that's fun. Okay.
Yeah, it's like, it doesn't
No
feel
big
that
deal.
bad anymore. Cause it feels like I already know what I would do.
Mhm.
Right.
Because I'm lucky enough that I live in a country where there is such a place as shelters, especially for women in that sense. So I already know, like, if anything happened, I'm just going to call up the next shelter down the street and go there, you know, and at least I'll have somebody to cook for me. Because my diet is horrible otherwise. But yeah,
Fair enough.
so like I feel that though, like a lot of everybody I know is so like scared of these kind of things, and it's like once you go through it, you're like, yeah, I already know what it's like.
Got it. I want to talk a little bit about e-commerce as well,
Yeah,
since the whole show is supposed to be about it. I think people probably now have a pretty decent understanding of who you are, and that's awesome. Thank you very much, by the way, for sharing that.
Thank you too.
Yeah, it's a great context, actually. What did get you into, because there's not a natural transition into, okay, I'm going to start drop shipping. I don't know if you drop ship, but you know what I mean? Like there's
Yeah.
no natural transition there. Did that also come from like reading a book somewhere? Like where did that come from?
So when I graduated high school, or when I was about to graduate high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Because my whole life, as mentioned, I was never allowed to do anything. So I never knew anything about myself, not even what my favorite chocolate bar was. Like that's
Right.
how bad it was.
Yeah.
But I always knew that I wanted to travel and explore the world. And I always thought to myself, I think I want to run my own business, because if I do that, I can pursue all of my creative goals like acting, singing, whatever I want. I will have money and I can travel the world.
Nice and
So
easy.
yeah, it's so amazing idea. So I decided to pursue business / entrepreneurship in university. Met my ex around that time, who was really into entrepreneurship and pushed me even more into that. Like he just like pushed me into different courses in the city and all of that stuff. And as I went through my entrepreneurship program in university, I really started falling in love with entrepreneurship in itself, just because the whole field of entrepreneurship is all about choices.
Right.
And independence. And for my first time in my life, that's what I was having. I was having my own choices, my own independence, and that's just me as a person in general because of that. And I think it was in year 3 when we had guest speakers in my class who were basically 2 entrepreneurs that had started with drop shipping in the very, very early stages of it. Print on demand, to be exact, actually. And they talked about how we should use that to start our own businesses, and then later on transition to other things like they did. They started a wheat business later on, actually, funny enough. Canada, don't ask me. And so that's when I really started looking into drop shipping and learning more about it and stuff like that. A lot of people around that time were really interested in that and were like, oh, I'm going to follow up with you, Mr. Entrepreneur guy, and stuff like that. But by the end of year 4, I'm the only one who started a drop shipping store, I think, and no one else. And that's a whole, like, what was it, like 50, 70 people ever did. So that's how I just landed here.
What did I love this story, right? What did that teach you? That whole idea that everybody's in the entrepreneur class, they listen to the guys that came in or the gals that came in to teach. Everyone was like, I really want to do this. And one person did it. So what does that tell you?
I noticed this already like in year 4. Most people in that entrepreneurship class were in there because they liked entrepreneurship. Most people were there because they thought it was easier than accounting or finance. Most people were there because entrepreneurship is such a cool term in Canada now. You know, everybody wants to be the entrepreneur. You ask every second person on the street, they'll be like, I'm an entrepreneur. Why? I have an Instagram account. I'm like, Jesus Christ, well done. Then about, I want to say 10, 15 people are the kind of people that actually want to pursue it.
Right.
But would never really put an effort for it because they're just not used to putting more effort. And then you have like about 5 people in it that will do something, but not much, maybe just like take over mom and pop's business. And then 1 or 2 people might actually try something new and like go for it. Yeah, so basically it's like a lot of other things in life where people do not necessarily realize the amount of sacrifice and effort you have to put into something to make it work.
Yeah. I mean, that was going to be the next thing I was going to ask you. Like, most people look from the outside and say, running an online store, you just, sign up for DrTech and then you just put some products out there and then you're good to go.
Yeah.
But it's much harder than that.
For sure.
How hard is it? Go ahead, Martin.
No, just before we go on the e-commerce side, that's very funny what you said about everybody want to be an entrepreneur and they have an Instagram account and they are an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I call these people the one-uppreneur because they want to be an entrepreneur, but they're just not gonna do it. And a lot of people like see how cool it is from the outside, as you said, Michael, because they want the output, like they want the benefit of being an entrepreneur, but like everything that we do daily to build our company is nothing but sexy. it's the complete opposite, and nobody want to do that. Like I don't know for you guys, but for my company, I'm working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week for like 2 years, and when you say entrepreneurship is that, I'm pretty sure that way less people want to do that now. and yeah, we often talk about like the good stuff and what's beautiful and the shiny part of entrepreneurship, and that's great. But like, there's also a lot of work and also a lot of sacrifice that you have to do if you want to make it work. Yeah. Especially if you innovate, if you start something new, if you have an idea and you want to make it a product or a service or a company, then like it's very, very hard.
Yeah, it reminds me of being on the trading desk, right? They were always, because it was the coolest job to have at like Goldman Sachs, and everybody wanted to have that job. And periodically, we'd actually interview people from internally. They'd be like, yeah, I definitely want to be a trader. And you could just tell from day one during the interview, they had no idea like how hard it was going to be and how stressful it was going to be. And I remember this one guy applied for the job and actually got it, which shocked me because my boss was the biggest dick in the world. I could not believe he hired the weakest person ever. And I said to him, I'm like, dude, this guy's going to fail. It's going to be ugly to watch. And he's like, well, I think he's going to be good. Fine. The dude did not last for like 2 weeks. And he walked off the trading desk one day. I won't say he was in tears, but he was really close because it's just much harder than it looks. And I think what you do as well is just much harder than it looks. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the important thing is, I think, that I want to add is, especially with entrepreneurship, you really got to have a purpose for it. And that's one thing I learned in my last class in university, actually, where our professor basically asked everybody in the room, and this was a mix between entrepreneurship and other business students like marketing, accounting, finance. He said, if I gave you $10 million right now, what would you do with the money? What would be like the smartest decision you could make, kind of thing, right? Everybody started putting up their hand and going, I would invest into EFS. I would invest into stocks. I would buy real estate and sell it in like the X amount of years. And most people that answered were actually entrepreneurship students too. And that surprised me like really badly. I was like, not a single person said, I want to start a business or whatever, you know?
So weird.
So then I put up my hand and I said, well, if I had $10 million, I would probably use 4 million to give it away to people, to buy houses for people that have helped me in my life
I love
or
it.
that really need it, like my older sister, my brother, my adoptive dad, and his best friend kind of thing. And my professor laughed and said, that's kind of a bad decision. You know that there's no like return on investment on that. You're just giving it away. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And he's like, you're an entrepreneurship student. Didn't we teach you anything in 4 years? And I'm just like, oh, well. And then I said, the remaining 5 to 6 million, I would use to start my own company. And he said, you know, that's like the most riskiest investment you can have. And I said, yeah, I know. But for me, it's really not about the money. Like, I don't care if the company doesn't return the money in the end. If it fails, that's okay. For me, it's about knowing that I created something for this world and having the successes, reaching those milestones and those goals and growing it. And he then pointed at me and said, most entrepreneurs start a business for exactly that reason. We actually did a survey on this in the university. It's never about the money.
No.
It's always about wanting to grow and create something for the world and having an impact. And then the conversation went on. And in the end, he said, if I had $10 million, I would do exactly the same as she. I would probably like give away 10 million, 5 million, I mean, and then use the other 5 million to put it back into startups that I believe in and support them as mentor.
Right. I mean, that's my answer. Is I'd give away half of it, and the others, I would invest $1 million in myself and $1 million in 4 other people to diversify my risk. But yeah, same answer. Yeah. Same answer. I love it.
And so people don't realize that entrepreneurship is not about the success, like it's not about the money and stuff, because that might never even happen. It's really about having a purpose that you want to pursue and like pushing for that.
There's a certain joy. So for me, it's very interesting, right? Because I come out of a corporate background. Mm-hmm. And when you're sitting on a trading desk, you think like, oh, I'm definitely being creative here and I'm building businesses from scratch. But you forget about, there's that smirk again. I love it. But you forget about all the infrastructure that's around you that allows you to do that. I mean, the hardest part of doing this is creating that infrastructure that makes it possible to actually build something from scratch. And I think that's another thing that most people take for granted. But there's a joy. I mean, the conversations that we have at True Digital Park with the other people that are building things from scratch and that we would have with you if we were in a co-working space with you as well are not gigantic things. It's just these little wins that we get along the way. Like, I've been working on this thing for a long time and I finally figured it out, kind of thing. And those just build into things like little successes come bigger successes. It's just fun to talk about it. Yeah. It's exciting. Yeah.
That's for sure. Definitely. You said that so well, Michael, and that's very interesting from your point of view, because as you said that you have like a corporate background, right? Like you spend a lot of time working in corporate, and now you're doing entrepreneurship now. So now it's another way of seeing things. Did you have a job in your life, Radha, or you directly start with e-commerce and you jump into entrepreneurship?
Oh, like I had the odd part-time jobs while I was in university, random things. First one was selling newspaper subscriptions, which was a whole different story that I shouldn't go into, unless we have time, of course. And then I liked the odd jobs, you know, and then I did serving/hosting for a while, but again, just part-time while I was in university.
Right.
And then outside of that, I did like gigs for like photography, because I do a lot of extracurriculars, some DJing here and there. But yeah, right after university, I pretty much just went into e-commerce without a full-time job or anything.
So it was like your real first-time job, let's say, like your real first-time experience into the real world, right?
Exactly. And for me, that was the thing. Like, I don't think I could have just started with a job. I just was like, there's no way I don't see myself in a job. It has to be like some sort of self-employment direction for me.
Yeah, I joke that like I'm completely unemployable. It's not that I'm not smart enough to do the job. It's just that I just don't think I could put up with somebody else telling me what to do all the time. Not just part of it, but you know what I mean?
Except me.
Martin is always bossing me around. That's a different story.
He looks like the one who would do that.
I'm not saying I listen to him, but it
Yeah,
is what it is.
for sure. You never listen to me, except for the green screen and lightning and all of that. But for everything else, you do whatever you want. But
Pretty
this is also why we like to be in our company, like, right? And this is also the beauty of e-commerce, because like when you do that, and I feel we can jump into drop shipping and the way it works and the way it works for you, Radha, and your point of view and stuff like that. But once we're doing that, we are free, right? Like you can do your own best decision. You don't have a partner, you don't have investors, you don't have like people that you need to, like give feedback or give stuff like that. If you want to move fast, if you want to do something, you can just try and fail and learn and improve and iterate that. So then you can get better and better and better. And of course, over time, over months or years after that, it can definitely become a very successful business and very big business, right? But all of this part of iteration is very important, I think. And what dropshipping and e-commerce allow you is that you can do that very fast and on your own without once again, an investor or co-founder, which can slow you down at the end of the day sometime.
Yeah, totally agreed.
So can you tell us a little bit more about, like what has been your journey through e-commerce? And
like, what was your first product? How did you decide what it was? You know what I mean? Like you woke up on a Tuesday and you're like, okay, I'm in the e-commerce business. Then what do you do? Do you know what I mean? Like, then what did you do? I don't even know.
So funny enough, right about a month before I graduated, I was one of 12 people selected from my university to attend an entrepreneurship boot camp overseas in Germany with international students.
Oh, wow.
It was like about a week long. And since I grew up in Germany, I was like, oh, perfect opportunity to kind of think. It was like a week-long thing where they put a bunch of students from Europe together and we worked on some sort of entrepreneurship challenge. Now, I was already planning on starting an e-commerce store right after graduating or right around that time. And while we were coming up with ideas, that's when the pandemic started going crazy. Like literally, this was in the beginning of March of 2020, right?
Oh my God.
Like we were literally in the boot camp when every day we would walk in and be told, okay, Canadian students, we might not be returning home on Saturday because they just shut down another airline. Or things like, oh my gosh, somebody in this group caught corona. So they're sitting upstairs. So everything started going really wild, like in seconds on us. That was like the week everything just blew up. And a couple of people obviously in my group mentioned, what if we made something like corona related as a product idea? And there was this one professor we were talking about with, and I think it was somebody's idea in my group, but I really thought I kind of added to it. The idea was basically, what if we sold like emergency kits for corona, like those subscription boxes?
Yep.
But something corona related, like a subscription corona box. And my professor was like, that could actually be a genius idea. And I thought so too, because I was like, that's an opportunity. Pestle analysis, I was like, that's what's happening in the world. Maybe we could tap into that. My group thought it was a good idea, but was like, we're not going to do that. Fast forward a month later, I managed to come back the day before the Canadian borders closed.
Wow.
So that was lucky.
Lucky you.
And I decided that my first product should be corona related because that's what's happening in the world. And I came across this product that I thought was amazing, which was like a sanitizer with a UV light. So it was basically like this UV light that sanitizes stuff when you hold it across like certain areas.
Oh.
You know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about. So if you have a doorknob, you could shine it on the doorknob and it would sanitize.
Kind of sanitizes, yeah. I saw a couple of people starting to sell that online. I thought it looked like a great product. I found a really good supplier who had like all of the certificates proving that it actually works and stuff, like the research was behind it. And that's what I created my first store around. Now, I kind of started off thinking it's going to be so easy and it's such a great product. And I told my friends and they're like, you think you can make this long term? kind of thing. And I was like, well, because back then everyone thought the pandemic is only going to be like 2 months or so,
Yeah.
And I was like, no, but I know how I can grow this business. It's going to go so well. And then I'm going to go expand it national, and I'm going to sell it to these companies here. I don't know. I was just daydreaming, and I was thinking that I could stop the pandemic with these laser lights. I tried to sell those, didn't do so well, but I learned a lot in terms of building better product pages, because I realized, okay, I don't think I put in enough effort here. Did that, and I kind of broke even with it, actually. I sold a couple of units. Then I decided to run Google ads, and that's when I lost money. And so
Can I
after a
ask you?
couple of months, go ahead.
Yeah. Can I just ask you a question about that? Sorry to interrupt you, but like when the crisis struck in Europe, I was already in Thailand, and my family could not have face mask, because the government just could not get masks into France. Right? Don't ask me why. No idea why. But just like French people did not have masks like in March, April, June, like when the pandemic was very, very bad into France. And we were in Thailand, and we have a lot of masks, like really a lot. Like for us, it's super simple to get masks.
Easy.
We just go in the street, and there's someone who sell that, someone who made it from home. Like, yeah, there's small vendors everywhere. We could get tons of masks. So I was like, same as you. That's an opportunity, right? Like
Yeah.
I go to the Thai post, and I was like, can you ship to France? They're like, yeah, it's take 2 weeks, but that's possible. I was like, perfect, let's do it. So I launched my e-commerce store, and I'm like, let's just sell some masks in France, right?
I love it.
And so I had the supplier, so local supplier, because I was in Thailand. I could like handle the shipping and all of that myself, because I was physically into Thailand. And when I started to do some ads, this is the moment where Facebook, Google completely killed me, because they said you cannot advertise anything related to COVID and take advantage of that. And I was like, I'm not taking advantage of that. I'm bringing a solution to people who need one, because the government cannot do it. My parents, my sisters, my grandparents cannot have masks. I just ship them a lot. So they have it now. So why not I ship it to other people? And of course, I need to make a profit, because if I don't make a profit, then I cannot help millions of people. I'm just gonna send 50, and then done. I don't have millions of dollars to waste, right? So I need to make a profit so I can keep shipping and sending, right? And they just didn't allow me to do that. And I was like,
Wow.
this is so unfair, because okay, there is a lot of people who of course are going to profit from it and do bad stuff, right? But when this platform just said, hey, you cannot advertise, and they put everybody in the same basket of bad people, I was like, there's something wrong. Like they don't get entrepreneurship the right way. There is something that is broken here, that doesn't allow people to bring solution and to bring innovation and good stuff where we need it. So my question for you is that, how did you advertise? You didn't have any problem like me?
Interesting question, actually, because I saw that too. Like, I started the store. I was super excited.
Okay.
I go on Facebook and I see that you can't do it. I was like devastated, because I spent literally 2 months building the store. Like, I put a lot of effort into it, since it was my first time also building a store. Now, I was a little lucky, because Facebook specifically had banned masks and hand sanitizers. This was a sanitizing UV light. So it didn't entirely fall into the category of hand sanitizers. But Facebook was a little aware that people were starting to sell these. Facebook didn't necessarily shut people down on that. I do think they shadow banned ads a little bit, meaning that they didn't show them as well. And initially at one point they like banned all of my ads, but then I would ask for a review and they would approve them, since it didn't entirely fall under the category. So that's why I think I kind of broke even. I don't think Facebook was really showing the ads that much, but it kind of just did okay. And then in terms of Google ads, I lost money because no one knew what a sanitizing UV light was. Everybody was looking for hand sanitizers, but no one was necessarily specifically looking for UV lights.
For that. Yeah.
Yeah, and with Google Ads, the way they work is they work the best when you can have very specific long-term keywords, right? Since no one was searching for it, I really just lost money with the Google Ads in that sense. But that's how I did it. But I totally agree with you that I also thought it was a very broken system, especially with Facebook just trying to be like nothing COVID related. I was like
And
I know people take advantage of this, but it's also like, one, people also try to help with it, and
mhm.
two, if you look at it from an economic standpoint, both the demand curve shifted to the right and the supply curve shifted up, so it's normal that the price will increase to an extent for face masks because there's less supply and more demand. And a lot of people were like, oh, everybody who charges more for masks than what they should, they're trying to rip off people. When in reality, it's like, no, there's a pandemic. We have to charge a little bit more because there's more risk, more demand, less supply. And I don't know if my business will end tomorrow. So I need to have something set aside for like
Uh,
starting something else or continuing with this, right?
and also, like,
But
all of the
yeah,
shipping costs were crazy high from Thailand to France. I
exactly.
remember it was very, very, very expensive just to pay for
Yeah.
shipping to from
Yeah.
Thailand to France, and we didn't really have this supply problem here for Thailand, but it was like more than a logistic issue to ship to France and then to, because you cannot just like put one mask and ship to one people in France from Thailand. It would be like way too expensive. So we had to ship a box and then ship it to a friend in France and then ship it locally. It was the way we were doing that. But yeah, I think, Michael, we should do one day an episode about marketing and the power that Facebook and Google has over e-commerce,
Absolutely.
because I think
This
that's a
was
very interesting topic, and this example completely relate to that. And I
yeah.
think this power is way too strong, and we definitely need innovation into this field, from my point of view, to take away that this guy can just decide yes or no, or yes, or you can do
Right.
it, you cannot do it. Like, there is way too much power into the hand of way too few people, from my point of view.
I have an idea.
Tell me, Michael.
No, I'm serious. I have an idea. And this was actually in my notes to ask because, again, I don't run my own e-commerce store. I do talk to a ton of people that are in the business, but I don't run my own. And that was the question I was going to ask. It says, is Facebook either too noisy from an ad perspective, or, how do you handle discovery, particularly when they're controlling it? In other words, it's like I like to make an equivalency to an offline store. If you just opened up a shop on Main Street in wherever you live in Canada and just put a sign out front that said, masks for sale, $50 a piece or whatever it is, no one can come by your shop and like rip the sign down and say you can't advertise.
Mhm.
Mm.
Now, if it's a scam, if it's not really a mask, or you're charging $1,000 where the guy next door is charging 30, well, then no one's going to buy your stuff anyway. But imagine if some dude would just like walk down the street and go, no, can't say that, can't do this, can't do that. And only one guy decided. Nobody wants to live in that world.
Mm.
And that's why I was going to ask you that question. You've already answered it to a certain extent, but yeah, we should dedicate an entire show to a topic like that, because
Yeah.
the hegemony of advertising online is really just Google and Facebook and nobody else, right?
There is some other platform, but like mainly e-commerce. Like, I don't know a lot of stores who don't do Facebook or Google. Like, some goes also on Snapchat, on Pinterest, on other platform, but they mainly most of the time do Facebook or Google. That's the main
So this is what
source of traffic.
so this is what Shopform is trying to actually solve, right? Is create a platform of just pure discovery for e-commerce. But I think there's another way to do it.
Tell us, Michael. We
And
always
I
have
think it's in,
tens of ideas on this show. So
but I think you do it in reverse.
okay.
So you have a place where people go, you call it like, myadvertisements.com. And you have an ID and you log in with an ID and you ask. So you can't be retargeted, yeah? But you ask, you're like, I'm looking for a hairdryer. And then you see ads for hairdryers because that's why you're there. So you have intent, right? And it's more complicated than this, but you go there with intent to buy or to learn. You type in hairdryers. That's all you see. There are no ads flashing around on the side. It's just the stuff that you've asked for. And then if you buy a hairdryer, right? I told you, my girlfriend did this. She was searching for Dyson hairdryers and then she bought one, but still gets retargeted all the time for the ads. And you would just want to be able to tell the ad platform, like, I already own it.
But
Like,
it's
since you're
don't
wasting your time retargeting me, I bought
don't
it.
and your money.
But if you have a platform that's specifically there just for ads and you ask for the ads so you can learn, right? Like, what kind of beer should I buy? You see, a Budweiser ad or a Sing ad. Oh, I'll take the Sing. Then you just turn it off. But you go there specifically for products, right? So you could do it for your e-commerce business, right?
Mhm.
People searching for sanitizer, they would find your product. I don't know if you're still selling it, but that's the idea. And when they leave, because that's the way the real world works, right? In other words, imagine, Radha, if you went into a store, a physical store, and you wanted to buy like a pair of sneakers. And you walked in, you're like, I'm looking for a pair of red running shoes. And they're like, oh, we don't have those here. And then you walked out onto the main street on the sidewalk, and some dude just came up behind you and tapped you on the shoulder and go, you want red running shoes? Yeah, I know it. I know you definitely do. Follow me. Just come with me. You'd be like, this is just weird.
Go on this,
But
go
that's what
there.
retargeting is. Anyway, so there's a more fully formed idea around that, but it's about intent,
But like,
right?
I think the bad news is that it works. Like if Facebook and Google are doing that and if they're making so much money, it's because people are going to buy in the end of the day. So e-commerce company keep advertising because it works. So
But
like
but
there's
it
no
doesn't. It
real,
doesn't, right? Because
yeah.
it doesn't though, right? You can get crowded out. Sorry, Radha, go ahead. It looks like you want to say
It's
something.
interesting. So, do I think it's a great idea? Yes. I do think Pinterest does something similar in terms of advertising. The only thing that's different with Pinterest is that it's for very specific niches and products. A lot of people go on Pinterest when they look for home decor, for example, or fashion, jewelry, those kind of things. And how it works is specifically to buy. So they just go and type on Pinterest canvas painting, for example, something, or like some sort of jewelry necklace. And they will see a bunch of posts. And a lot of those are actually from e-commerce stores that either advertise them or sell these kind of things organically. People look through them and save the pins to buy stuff later on or
Yep.
to buy it right away. And the thing with those kind of ads is you generally don't, like, you can get retargeted if the company has set up like Google and Facebook to retarget you on those. But generally you just go, you look for what you want, you save it, come back later and then buy it and stuff. So in a way it's a little similar to Pinterest. But for me, the thing is that the reason there's so much retargeting with Google and Facebook and all of these companies is because Google and Facebook obviously make more money the more they retarget you.
Correct. That was the point I was going to make.
And yeah, and the other thing is it also sells more because apparently you have to hear a no 17 times before somebody says yes. That's
Right.
some statistic I heard somewhere. The obvious issue with Facebook and Google is that a lot of e-commerce store are using them because that's what everyone knows, not
Correct.
necessarily because it works all the
Right.
time.
Right.
It's the easiest way. It's what everybody teaches you online. It's just like, yeah, it's the easiest thing to learn about. As some job shippers, especially more advanced ones, transitioning over to other ad platforms as their main source, yes, I know a couple of people who specifically go into Pinterest, and TikTok is actually a brand new one that a lot of people are going and tapping into, which seems to be doing quite well. So
Do you use TikTok?
I'm starting to, as in the sense that I started TikTok more so because of me being a musician and an artist. I
Right.
wanted to grow a platform where I can like have the following and sell my own things.
Right.
Now, fun fact, actually, you probably didn't see my last video. I don't think so, but my first TikTok video a few weeks ago went viral.
Went viral.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
saw the video.
So, oh, never mind then. So
No, go
I'm
ahead.
really trying so I'm trying to tap into that and try to build that audience that I can use for my e-commerce store, because I can just like sell products to that audience if I needed to. I can do my own advertising and then also use it as like for my music and acting related stuff. But aside from the influencer route, there's also obviously the ad platform, which is something I'm gonna like try out in the next couple of weeks too.
Do you find yourself you're constantly testing new things?
In a way, yeah. But I always feel like I'm not testing enough. Like I always have these like crazy ideas for both content in terms of YouTube, TikTok, whatever I do, and in terms of advertising, e-commerce store. And I am constantly testing stuff, but I always find like, oh, I still haven't tested this idea. I should have tested this. I should be doing this. So it feels like a never-ending cycle.
Yeah. What's the purpose of the videos that you produce? I mean, they're really good. I'm talking about the YouTube stuff that you do. They're really, really good, actually. Is it to drive sales? Is it to create like an online persona and to have like a story about you? Is it a combination of both?
So ideally, my future goals are to become a role model, in the sense that I want to be a singer, I want to be an actor in the future, and I want to run my own companies. Ideally, I want to be somebody that is known in this world, that is influential enough to tell people about my stories, tell people about my messages, inspire them to start their own businesses or pursue their own careers if that's what they want. And so for the future, I see myself not just as a singer and an actor, but also as the person who has the YouTube accounts to teach people about business and all of the related things. Ideally, I want this channel specifically to expand into talking about entrepreneurship and not just job shipping.
Right.
And that's pretty much why I started it, to teach people about business. To be honest, the channel and the social media stuff that I do is more important to me than the e-commerce store in itself. And my goal was always to have this, like the channel. The e-commerce store was rather to like help people and to teach them with what I'm doing there. So yeah, I think I answered that question. Did I?
You did. I like
Yeah.
it. In other words, the e-commerce stuff in a way funds the other things that you want to build. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it funds it, and it also is like the guinea pig, if that
Yeah,
makes
it's
sense.
the platform teaching mechanism that you can use. Yeah, like as a test. That's why I asked the question about testing, because it's just really interesting. I do the same thing, but just in a different medium, right?
Yeah.
There's a very purposeful reason for all of the verticals in the video. I mean, sorry, in the audio stuff that I do. So it's just really interesting.
Okay.
Kind of doing the same thing, but
Nice.
coming at it from a different direction. Kind of neat.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Can I ask you one more question about marketing, rather? Because I have one more question because we jump into another topic. I wanted to ask you, like, you say that maybe there's some other platforms and people like start to jump into like new way. First, my first question is, did you discover some platform that we don't know and that only the insiders know right now? And my second question would be, did you ever try the marketplaces like Etsy, Amazon, and stuff like that, and link your e-commerce business with those marketplaces?
That's a great question.
So first question, did I discover some sort of platforms? I want to say yes and no, in the sense that I know other job shippers who are like mentors whom I've worked with, who specifically focus on certain platforms, like one that focuses on Pinterest. He always talks about how Pinterest is the next wave, how he only uses Pinterest. He abandoned Facebook. Pinterest is his everything. I tried Pinterest for a while, and for me, it's not the everything. It doesn't work as well as Facebook. It doesn't work in general. But then the thing is, I do feel like I have not tapped into the full potential of Pinterest. So I still keep testing it. I do believe that Pinterest can be a really great advertising platform if you learn how to make it work and if you have the right products, because unlike Facebook, you need to have very specific products for Pinterest. The other thing is TikTok, as mentioned. I do not necessarily have tested that, but I do see a lot of potential in TikTok for the reason that, one, it's much easier to have content go viral on TikTok than any other platform out there. And for the second reason being, because it's such a new platform, TikTok is the newer the platform, the easier it is to work with the platform because they're more lenient, they're more like flexible. They also have credits in the beginning when you start out, like Google does too, but unlike Facebook, for example, they don't give you that. And the nice thing about both Pinterest and TikTok is they are set up pretty similar to Facebook in terms of the targeting and stuff like that. So while I can't say, yes, I have found another platform that's like who the next thing. I do believe there are a lot of other options out there, like both TikTok, Pinterest, and I do believe influencer marketing as well, that are probably the next thing that that people should try, and that I would consider what you just described as the sacred new platform. And then for your second question, which was, what was the second? Sorry, repeat the second question again.
So first of all, thank you very much for this overview, let's say, of the ads platform. And just before we go into my next question, I have another one just before that. What about e-commerce without ads? What about, like, can we do e-commerce from your point of view without going to Facebook, to TikTok, to Snapchat, to Google? Like, can we imagine an e-commerce store or an e-commerce brand not going with ads?
So like organic, yes. And
Another
I've
way.
seen a lot of people do it. I have seen a lot of people have success with it. The only thing is, if you do it organic, it's going to take you much longer, and it's going to be much more effort, because you have to constantly engage with an audience. You constantly have to grow the audience by like reaching out on social media and growing pages. That is a whole business in itself, in my opinion, because you have to grow an Instagram following, which is a business. You have to grow a Facebook following, YouTube, TikTok, whatever platform you use, you have to grow the following and engage with them. So yeah, you can do it. It's just gonna be much more effort.
Okay.
Interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting to have your point of view about growth and marketing, like from somebody who is actually doing it, right? So that's super cool. And so my third question now is is like, what about the marketplaces? Have you ever tried that? Have you ever like used Amazon or Etsy or like any other kind of marketplaces to grow your e-commerce business?
Like I always shop on eBay, Etsy, and that kind of stuff. So I knew those platforms as a kid. Once or twice I sold something on eBay. Specifically for my e-commerce journey, I have not used them to sell things, but also more so because one of my suppliers, one of my biggest suppliers, is actually from Etsy. So they have their own Etsy store. In a way, if I was to sell on Etsy, I would just be competing with them, and that would be weird. It wouldn't work in that direction. They also sell on Amazon, so that wouldn't work either. Ideally, though, for me, the thing is, I don't necessarily want to per se. And for me, that's more so because I want the challenge. And I feel like that was one of the reasons I started e-commerce too, was because I wanted to learn how to advertise. I wanted to learn how to market. I wanted to go out into like a cold world when nobody knows me and just sell it to anybody, kind of thing. And advertising by yourself, having your own store, allows you to do that. It's like you have to figure out how to get traffic and sales to your site. Whereas when you go on platforms like Etsy and eBay, and I've used Kijiji before, so I have like somewhat of an experience, not necessarily for e-commerce stores, but general. It's not about advertising and getting sales, because the traffic is already there. If somebody is looking for your product, they're going to find it. On platforms like Etsy and Amazon, it's more so about creating the ideal descriptions, having the best pictures, making basically your page the prettiest and most standout page. So if you just want to learn more about building amazing product pages, yeah, Etsy, Amazon, that's the way to go. But if you want to learn marketing specifically, how to drive sales, how to convince people to click on your ads, then Etsy and Amazon is not the best place for that. And so that's why I never really pursued those avenues. Maybe at some point I'll give it a try, but right now I don't think I necessarily want to, just because I want to expand my knowledge in these areas more.
Completely makes sense. Michael, you want to ask something?
I mean, I've got 1,000 more questions. I feel like we should do another episode. We could go on forever, but we've already taken up an hour and a half of Radha's time. We have, because we spent the first 30 minutes not recording, just laughing with each other, which was awesome as well. Why don't we stop now? It was great to have you on the show. And the honesty around all this stuff is really great. And I think that's one of the things I like about your videos. I don't feel like there's a lot of fluff there. And there's also not a lot of self-promotion. A lot of people do this to promote themselves as opposed to help other people. And I feel like I've watched your videos and I've learned stuff. And that's actually super cool. And since that's Yeah, and since that's the reason why you're doing it, it's working, because the stuff that you put out, it's not fluffy. It's just, here are the stuff I learned, here are the facts, here's the way to do it. That whole thing you did on product pages, I thought was fascinating, like really fascinating.
Very glad to hear that. A lot of times I'm always worried that my content is too boring in a way, that it's like too dry, that it's not like super pretty and stuff. But I always try to focus on what I think is the most important. So I'm glad to hear that.
It's
And
real,
I
though.
think it's working. A lot of people tell me.
Yeah, it's real. Look, I think people identify really closely with other people that seem like they're real and that they're like they are, right? In other words, they know you're a real person. You're not making this stuff up. And when you're not making the videos, you're doing all the things you say you're doing and you're making money, right?
Yeah.
So like the proof is in the pudding, I think, in this one. But I think I really like the videos that you put out, and it's pretty impressive, actually.
Thank you.
I
So
completely agree
yeah.
with Michael, but you know that already, that I love your video and that I think you're doing an amazing job. So yeah, definitely keep going. That's definitely super cool, and we're gonna keep watching all of your videos when they come out.
Yay.
And
Thank you so much for the support.
it's our pleasure. Anyway, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. What is your Sunday morning? You're in Canada, right?
Yeah.
So it's your Sunday morning. It's our Sunday night. And just thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you as well.
Thank you, Radha. Bye bye.
Don't leave.
Bye. Have a wonderful day.